All right. Recording. Hi, everybody. I'm back. Welcome to my little channel. Today, we are in Darien, Georgia at Fort King George. So we're going to wander through here. And if you like wandering and exploring, then come wander and explore with me and hit subscribe. And here we go. This is one of my favorite places. I know I say it a lot. And it's another windy day, but it is gorgeous outside today. So pretty here. Okay, let's talk about Fort King George and Darien. So I talked about Darien in my last video. So last time we were in Midway, which was midway between Savannah and Darien. So Fort King George was actually built in 1721 by the British. Captain, I think he was a Captain John, known as Tuscarora Jack Barnwell, basically begged the king for a fort because first the Wale Indians were here in this area on coastal Georgia. Hopefully you can see these butterflies going around. And then the Spanish. So this is right in that contested territory between the British and the Spanish, British South Carolina and Spanish Florida. And of course Indians didn't like having people here. So the British put a fort here, and like I said, 1721. There is a Wale. I think they called it a roundhouse. Wale. It is windy. Yes, it is a roundhouse. That's the thing about the coast, it's going to be windy. And I thought about doing a voiceover, but I just kind of like you hearing my reactions as I walk. Okay, so anyway, Fort King George, built in 1721 to defend against the Spanish, the Indians. So the Wale were here first, the Indians. The Spanish came in. They built a mission around here, which apparently they found some archaeological evidence of. I'll walk over there in a little bit. There were about 100 men at this fort when it was first garrisoned, and it just was beset with problems pretty much from the get-go. You know, they're in the middle of nowhere. Darien hadn't been established until, wasn't going to be established until 1736 by our man.
Oglethorpe.
You got it. Yeah, Oglethorpe. So they were in the middle of nowhere. They're coming from Britain. There's disease. It's hot. There's just things they're not used to. And they were just pretty dispirited. The fort was only really in action or around in use for about 6 years until 1727. And at one point between, I don't know, I think it was, I've seen 1725, I've seen 1726. Part of, I think the barracks caught fire. And while there was no proof of arson, there was also really no proof that anybody really worked hard to put the fire out. They just didn't want to be here. Barnwell had asked for a garrison of men that were to be young and spry and all of this, and apparently they were sent a bunch of invalids. It was just kind of a mess. Nobody cared, it sounds like. My favorite part of this story is that, the fort was done by 1727. I want to say, shouldn't say done. It was garrisoned. They did have two men manning the fort until about 1732, I think. But yeah, definitely two men, and then it just fell into disrepair. There was a sawmill here. Darien was built in 1736 as like a fortified town, as another line of defense against the Spanish. We are about, I don't know, about 60 miles south of Savannah, so getting closer and closer to Spanish territory, which would be Florida. I'm really jabbery today. There's a lot of information, and I wrote down about a lot of years, and I'll probably add. Now that I know how to add little insets, be ready. You've been warned. I'm going to add a lot now. Where was I? Oh, my favorite part about this. My dream as a history nerd was realized actually by this woman, Bessie Lewis. I had read that she was a teacher. So she had come to McIntosh County, which is where we are in Georgia, in the 30s. And the fort, you know, obviously earth, wood, how it was built, it was just no more. And she'd seen, you know, she found old maps that kind of had things that, you know, little markings that said Old Fort. There was a map in the visitor center from 1776, right around the time of the Revolution. It was already called the Old Fort. So it was pretty much, you know, just done. You know, like any other place that just falls out of use. Any wood that was maybe still left around was hauled off and probably used elsewhere, especially with a brand new town like Darien at the time. It's just so pretty. I mean, it is a gorgeous day. So anyway, she was really interested in the history. She'd heard about this old fort. I've read a couple of different things about how it happened. And she wanted to find out where it was. You know, it became a legend at that point. Darien, you know, was a pretty decent-sized town back in the late 18th century. But it too fell on hard times and just kind of fell off. You know, during the Civil War, it was set on fire. And then that was just pretty much, you know, it. Now it's just a little place. Very cool. But she had heard about this fort, and she wanted to find out where it was, and she had to go up to Charleston, you know, to the Historical Society. She found old maps. She just kind of crawled around and was able to pinpoint where the fort was, which I think is actually pretty neat. So this wall right here is actually part of the sawmill that was here in the 19th century. I want to say around it was probably early to mid 19th century. The Highlanders from Inverness are who Oglethorpe brought over to build Darien. So basically what they did, they were like, this fort's kind of useless, not working out, let's just go down the road. It's literally right down the road. Right here. So let's walk on in. Obviously a recreation. They do a lot of cool functions here at Fort King George. They did, I think they called it Navy Days. So they had reenactors. You know, naval reenactors. They have, there's a group, what are they? I'm going to find out the name and I'll put it on here. But they're like Scottish Highlanders. Scotland's big in these parts. And I did a blog post about it. I know I mentioned linking it before, but I'm actually going to do it because I actually have a blog post to link. Don't make fun of it. I try. So yeah, here we are. I'm going to try to find a sign. I'm not remembering exactly. I mean, it was a star fort, I think would be the term. Let's see what these buildings are. Yeah, I'm never going to get away from this wind, and that's okay. I hope you don't mind, but it is what it is. I mean, I like the idea of like doing no sound and just doing a voiceover, but it just, you don't get the real me. So this would have been the blockhouse. Blockhouse literally means a house which blocks a pass. The Fort King George blockhouse was built to block Spanish and French ships from entering the mouth of the Altamaha River, which is where we are. Yeah, the French were here too. So you had the Wale, you had the Spanish. I believe the Spanish 1520s is when they built a mission here. Here's one of the barracks. This is a decent size and it has a lot of nice things, so I believe this was for the officers. They just did such a great job building this. Ladderback chairs that look like they could have come from my house, but they did not. Let's try to, once again, my really bad zoom skills. Can you see it? Oh, yeah, there you are. Hey, little candle thing. Very cool. Obviously, quite a few more amenities here, since they were officers. And they even had a fire hydrant. That's not a hydrant. Extinguisher. Get out of here. Dingo. I got here earlier and there weren't people here, and now there are people here. Ugh. Oh, I guess I'm glad to see it. I like to see people enjoying our state parks. This would have been non-officers. You're enlisted men. So remember, I mean, we are in a subtropic zone. It gets hot. So that building right there was probably for the big cheese. Whoa, whoever was in charge. Might have been Barnwell. Not a big fort, much like any of these other forts around here, just for defense. Let's go in the blockhouse. Let's just go take a look, see what's going on there. I think kind of the best part about, I don't know, I just like seeing these buildings. Okay. Big cheese. I had a very interesting conversation with one of the reenactors the last time I was here about clothes. Okay. Yeah, right into the wind. So So they've got some beautiful nature trails here too. Whoa. So it is September, and we had like 5 minutes of fall-like weather this morning, and it was glorious. It's really windy today. Okay, let's take a peek out here. Guns. The Altamaha River. That's pretty. Okay. So the gun range. Are we even looking at the same? We are. Am I a liar? What the heck? Darien River. What a doofus. Swivel gun range. 1/4 of a mile. Maybe that's Black Creek right in front of us. That does look more like a creek type situation. But yeah, I can go up even higher. Oh my gosh, and there's more maps. These floorboards are so they could fire from, if you could see, I know I'm walking kind of fast, all 4 sides. We're gonna head over to this Highland cottage. In the spring, when the azaleas are blooming, it's so pretty. Unless I'm remembering wrong. This mill was in operation from 1905 to 1923. Less profitable bugs than its predecessors. Let's zoom up a little bit. Get the moss. This is going to circle us back around. So I feel like the last time I was here for that Naval Days or Navy Days or whatever it was called thing, there were, you know, they had people set up everywhere. And there was a group of them here at the Highlanders Cottage. And, you know, reenactors, and my sister and I have said this often, it's just, you know, if I had the time and the money, I would definitely be into it. Because that's my type of thing. But you could see where they get a little, how do I put this? A little snarky. I follow on Facebook, you know, I follow different like reenactment groups as far as like costumers and such. And they, you know, they're real They're into their craft, which is, hey, good. But, you know, if somebody's new and just starting out, and if their shoe isn't completely HA, which for you guys that are not in the know is historically accurate, then so be it. They're having fun. They're teaching about history. They're learning about history. So if their fabric isn't HA, or their shoes, or God forbid, their glasses. I mean, it's crazy some of the discussions that you see. But it is kind of funny that how they act towards each other, and it's not so much just the clothing. It's you know, their characters that they're portraying, and they come from different groups. So here's our Highland cottage. Anyway, at Wormslow, my sister and I were making jokes because it was a big reenactment day, and they had Civil War reenactors, and they had Oglethorpe, and they had, I think, General Lachlan McIntosh, and, you know, all of these historical figures, and then your, you know, everyday people. And we were just like, you know, so is Oglethorpe like telling McIntosh he can't be in his sphere because, you know, he wasn't the founder of Georgia. There was an Oglethorpe guy here who was kind of like, I'm Oglethorpe. It's like, okay, put your wig back on, buddy. But anyway, I digress. They were very cool, but it was still kind of like, chill your tits. So here's our Highlander cottage. This was built for an anniversary for something, or to commemorate, I think. I almost fell! Thank God for those core exercises. I have reflexes. Jesus. I have reflexes like a cat, but I also apparently speak English like one too. A little bit of excitement in an otherwise boring video. Upstairs. Little room. I just had a near brush with death. I'm not climbing up there. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, and they had a nice window too. You know, that would be my room. Man, can you imagine the breeze? But this is a wattle and daub house, which would have been very similar to what would have been built back in the homeland. Trying to kept out the cold but held in the heat. So you imagine in the summer. But anyway, this was a recreation. I don't know that it was even actually here. And sorry, my follow just is not doing what I wanted to commemorate the Highlanders that were here in this area. I mean, literally, they brought people over from Inverness. They're like, hey, you want to go to America? And they're like, sure. And they're like, all right, we got the place for you. Don't mind the bugs or the heat. It's cool. So this would have been a house very similar to what the Scottish would have lived in. Kind of neat. Very Elizabethan looking. Different from the other houses. You know, they were pretty much timber houses. So it's, you know, about 60 miles south of Savannah. And then you've got this guy. Recreation. All right. I'm going to make my way over to the Spanish Mission. Try not to fall. All right, so we are coming up on some graves. So these are not actual graves. These headstones were placed here to commemorate the soldiers that died here. Oh. 1, 2, 3. And then there is one over there. So this says more than 140 British soldiers lost their lives in this first planned effort to hold the old Southeast for English-speaking people. That's what the little monument said. They only have 15. There was a significance to that number, and I don't remember it. So here we're coming up on the site of the early Spanish mission, which is kind of cool. You know, everybody focuses in this area on Indians and definitely the English because we were here, and Oglethorpe and all that. But you forget that there were Spanish missions. Apparently this is a high bluff. So in 1941 and 1953, archaeological evidence was found that showed that there was a Spanish mission. So this was part of a chain of missions. And if you didn't know, they were here to convert the Indians. And, you know, try to make them allies. So I thought these tabby ruins were of a house and not the mission. Let's see what this little sign says. And I was right. These tabby ruins were the 1800s home of Charlotte and Hampton McIntosh. Tabby is oyster shells, lime, and water. Look at this. I mean, that's their house. Doesn't seem that big. If it was 1800s, it was probably 2 stories. Pretty neat, though. Pretty neat. More people coming. You know, as much as I complain about people being here, I just don't want to look like a total weirdo. Look, there's butterflies everywhere. I do like seeing people here. I think more people should take advantage of our state parks. They have a lot to offer. They're not that expensive. You get out in nature. You learn something. Whether you like what you learn or not, that's fine. But you learn something. Alrighty. That, my friends, is Fort King George. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, subscribe. Because who doesn't like listening to me jabber while I wander around? It's fun. I enjoy it, and I think that you should too. Alright. Gosh, it's so muddy. Alright. Bye.